again here, I'm sad to say this, that again a very problematic type of politics is being played, and that actually is in a sense doesn't augur very well for India, because as has been explained by the expert of strategic affairs, there was a report by one of the former defense personnel of India in the print recently, and according to him, what actually has happened as of now in terms of the recent Chinese incursion in India, in terms of recent Chinese incursion in India, what actually has happened is that we have actually allowed the Chinese narrative to gain ground, in the sense that our own people, our own defense minister is saying that because of the lack of clarity, because of the existence of ambiguity as regards the line of actual control, there is misperception between India and China, and what China considers to be its own is something else, what India considers to be Chinese, and what India considered to be its own is not considered that way by China. And the current problem is actually the result of this. This is actually very problematic perspective, because by saying so, we are actually allowing China to have precedence over our narrative, because in some sense the things were not settled, but there was some sort of understanding between these two, China and India, that these are the areas in our control and that are the areas in your control. So for example, there was this two areas which has recently come to news, which had never ever been a bone of contention between these two, and that was well settled that both these areas of are in Indian possession, and both these areas are Indian. And those two areas has recently come to news is the area of Hot Spring and the areas of another Galwan River Valley. So these two areas, Galwan River Valley areas and Pangong Lake. See, the current incursion actually has taken place at two places. There's skirmishes which have taken place. The first skirmish took place in Pongsong, that area. That is in Aksai area, and the second one was in the Nakula place. Nakula is in Sikkim. So two front is there. One is in Sikkim and the other is in the Aksai area. So these areas are in Aksai area. This area of Hot Spring and Galwan River Valley. So the Hot Spring area and the Galwan River Valley area, which has now been taken by the Chinese, and there are satellite images, because of course we have not seen with our own eyes, so we cannot see everything with that much of conviction. But the satellite images which has come, that actually shows that China has actually built its military places there in the Hot Spring area and the Galwan River. Actually, they have moved into three areas in the Hot Spring areas, and those three areas are area named in terminologies of them, like PP14, the area of PP14, PP15, and there is the Gogra. There's a place called Gogra. So all these are the places which have for the first time been taken over by the Chinese, apart from the places which has been taken in the Galwan Valley. And our defense minister is saying that it is because of misperception. So that actually is quite problematic. That is actually in a sense what we are doing. We are actually allowing China to have its further incursion and inroad towards the Indian territory. Because now what will happen? This will not stop here, because of the manner in which we know the expansionist policies of China. Because China, for that matter, any country expands this way. If you got a virgin territory, if nobody is there to stop you, you will move. And it goes to the basic principle of which we studied, which we discussed earlier, the realist theory, which says. So what actually is happening is that by allowing this, by shrouding this in the mystery of inconclusivity of LAC, we are actually allowing a space to China for further times also. Because now what will happen? Having now taken the areas of Galwan Valley and Hot Spring, next time what China will do? China will move further in, and then we will again say that it is because of the misperception. So why is it that misperception is not from our side that way? That we take this side and we say that, see, this is the misperception. So we actually receding and backtracking, and that actually is not is very wrong. At least we should be honest enough to consider the things. At least we should be honest enough to give the impression to the Chinese that yes, we know what you are doing. You should at least know what you are doing, because narrative, building up of narrative matters a lot. And in this era of soft power, in this era of information technology, in this era of capturing the minds of the people, and we say of consent by information, because you give your consent on the basis of the information which you get. So if we are not opening up these things, and we are not allowing these things to be discussed in the manner it should be discussed, because if someone is critical of the recent government's stand, that doesn't mean one is against India. India and government are two different things. See, the current regime may come out with some policies which, for that matter, scholars may not like, because they have invested their whole energy and whole time in that particular area. They are invested in that area. So whatever is happening in that area, those people are actually in the know of the things, and they will come up with their opinion. It's for the government. See, we do understand, being scholars, we do understand that governments are in a lot of constraint. But being in constraint, being in international pressure is something else. And putting out facts in a different manner is something quite different. So we need to come up with a strategy which is open, which actually lets you know what is the actual state of affairs. Okay? Because if we are not aware of the actual state of affairs existing, then that is the beginning of, God forbid, our defeat. Because what happens as a result of the various forces working in the world, because you are facing problem, we are facing problem with Nepal also. As of now, we are facing problem with Pakistan also. We are beset with a lot of problems. Okay, and in this arena of chaotic international politics, what matters is your strength, and from where your strength come. Your strength comes from your clarity of thought, not shrouding things in mystery. That strength comes from being truthful, being visionary. Being visionary meaning by, we need to look for things beyond 5 years. Because nations are built not in 5 years. 50, 60 years is just as a small amount of time in nation's history. We have invested it a lot in making India what it is today. And when you have to make your country great, you have to invest yourself in principles. You have to give the impression that you are ready to sacrifice things for your principles. Because see what happened. When India got independent, India didn't have much resources. But still, there were many an occasion that India was asked to lead the peacekeeping forces. Why? Because of the fact that we invested energy in our morale, we invested energy in our being Indian, and we gave the impression that yes, we are an emerging leader, we are an emerging power, we are an emerging power with the backing of civilization, we are an emerging power with the backing of ourselves on principles, on just causes. And therefore, at a time when we want ourselves to be one of the representative in United Nations, when we want ourselves to be not just a local power, because others will want to invest ourselves and embroil ourselves in local rivalry and and want us to get embroiled in these small skirmishes and always remain cocooned in our local setting. But we have global aspirations. So if we have global aspirations, we need to be more visionary. Okay, and the recent moves by the current regime of in international politics, it's also very important that we do not put all our bets in one basket. And seniors have always, our sages have always told that we should not put all the eggs in one basket. So our closer, intimately closer, I'll say, partnership with United States of America for that matter, or the recently found newer, closer relationship with Israel, for example, actually needs to be understood, needs to be taken in a wider perspective, because we should not blink our eyes, we should not squint our eyes to the now and current. We should have the courage to look beyond. We should have the temerity, we should have the capability to understand things of consequences in future, because whatever things are happening in, for example, China, or for example Israel, or for example in other such countries, see, the longer, the larger, the broader consequences of that has to be seen, and we need to do things in a manner to get engaged with other powers in a sort of very intricately, dexterously textured relationship, and not just intimate relationship with one country. That actually is a realism of history which comes to us if we go through the foreign policy of different parts of the world. We have seen the manner in which there is a very good example of one of the country closer by. I don't want to take the name, it will be clear to you, that got itself very closely associated with the powers that be of the world that time, United States of America. I'm talking about US-Pakistan relationship. So what happened? At one point of time, Pakistan seemed to have scored a lot many things in international chessboard. But finally what happened? What happened? See, if you see Pakistan of 1970s, 80s, late 60s, from late 60s onward to different, and particularly after the Soviet incursion in Afghanistan, the manner in which the Americans supported the Pakistani-backed ISI, the people there in Mujahideen there in Afghanistan. At that time, there was a lot of support from America. But once the superpower interest finished, what was left for Pakistan? And the strategic thinkers of Pakistan say that the part of the problem that Pakistan is in so much turmoil today is because of that intimately closer relationship of Pakistan with United States of America, without looking for other important things. So that way, when we try to do things, when we try to move closer to some country, we should be aware of all these things. Okay, and we have seen that in two cases the problems have come to us. It actually very pertinently comes to our eyes. Two very important incidents that got a lot of optics as well, and the two thing was the unwelcome, unwanting, and you may say that whatever term you can give, you may give the unsolicited advice of American President Trump when some sort of problem between India and Pakistan happened. So Trump, without realizing the reality of the things here, that all through we have stood for not allowing other powers to come and meddle in our affairs, because these are internal issues. We are able to solve these issues on our own. This is the historical position of India. And the person whom you call as a wonderful friend, he shatters all these things and he says that I am ready to come and meddle in your affairs. So that was very problematic, and India cut a very solid state of affairs, solid figure in international checkerboard. Similarly, now what happened when there was this skirmish between China and India, as if India is not capable of solving things on its own. We need someone else. We don't need. So there is in international politics a lot many things which happens, and that has a lot of other factors too. But apparently, we say that we are capable of doing things on our own. But what happened? Your wonderful friend says that yes, I am ready to mediate between China and India. So actually, these are two optics, which people can generally connect with to see the immediate result of the relationship in international relations. When we go in for relationship with some country, when we go to more intimately closer relationship with some country, we must be aware of all these things. There are two more things which I like to flag in very quickly. There is a thing called a strategic relationship, and there is a thing called you may say in general understanding, the relationship which augurs much more than the strategic relationship. So strategically, we have to align with some countries because of the compulsions of world politics. So if we are entering into Indo-US nuclear deal, we are entering into the quadrilateral, that quadrilateral with Australia, Japan, India and America, the security quadrilateral and all these things. These things are actually, in a sense, diplomatically, politically, from international relations perspective, these things goes as the regular course of international politics, part of the international politics. These are a strategic relationship, and that is important too. But when we are going for more intense relationship with some country, then a lot many other factors has to be taken into account. The manner in which the history of those countries, those two countries, has actually mediated different issues. So we, in a sense, cannot be in a very closer relationship with some country which is, for example, historically an antithesis to the values we cherish. Okay, so all through, and it's our constitutional principle too, we stand for plurality, we stand for justice, we stand for the cause of truth, and this is our foreign policy objectives and foreign policies too. So we don't meddle in other countries, we respect the territorial sovereignty of different country. So a country which doesn't do these things explicitly too, so how can we be in a very close relationship with? The relationship could be a strategic. I'm not saying, this is not to mean here that, and it will be wrong for me if this assumption also goes, that I mean to say that we cannot get associated with other countries. We must go in with having a strategic relationship with other countries of the world. But that a strategic term needs to be taken into consideration, because that is strategic should make us aware of the fact that how deep to go, where to say no, where to say yes, till what point yes, till what point no. So these things have to be taken into consideration. And as regards the manner in which, again I'll say, the foreign policy is conducted, I'll say that it's important that the government of the day takes into account the views of different people. Because many a time it so happens the manner in which you are seeing things, that actually is not the way actually things are. So it's always good to have opinion of others. It's a different matter whether you agree to that or not. That's a different matter. But all options should be clear to you. You should be aware of all the options that way. So if you know the different pros and cons of the pros and cons of the things, if you are aware of the way in which people the different countries have their plans, so that actually enables you to make an informed understanding of the things. We must always go in for it had been said by Prime Minister Nehru too, and I was reluctant to use the name of Nehru because of the manner in which things have happened. But Nehru actually came out with a very good word, that is enlightened self-national interest. There is a national interest and there is enlightened national interest. So for example, just 30-40 more seconds I'll take. See, it's our interest to invest and dominate the world, but it's our enlightened interest to take care of the needs of our neighboring countries too. So for example, if we invest in hospitals in Afghanistan, if we invest in good things even in Pakistan for example, if we invest in the caring, rearing and yoga activities in Bangladesh and Nepal, so at the face of it, it will seem that it's not going to be of much help to us, but it is actually the enlightened national interest of the country. Because what actually happens, that actually brings not just an element of good publicity, that actually enables your soft power to sell, and that actually enables you to count much more on the mental imagination of people. And at the end of the day, it's what people think you to be. So why America is America is America? Because people think that America is a power to reckon with. Why China is emerging? China is emerging because of its soft power in some sense too. So that way, India has already got a lot of that soft power potential. So we must not let it go, and we must not let this be spoiled. Because the manner in which of late we have done a lot many things in, for example, Kashmir, the manner in which part of the reason that China is doing the things, the manner in which it's doing now is because of the fact that we brought changes in Kashmir in a manner we should not have done. Because the Aksai Chin area, the Ladakh area actually has been turned into a different constitutional framework. And that actually, there has been the esper of activities in those regions too by Indian people. So that actually has brought changes in the existing status quo, and therefore China has, as a result of all these things too, has moved in. So at a time when we are facing this pandemic COVID, we have a lot of problems, and internally also there is a lot of problem. So at such a time, we should try to not do those things which in the long run will not be beneficial for the country. We must go in for, again I'll say, enlightened national interest, and this is what I'll say.
So what do you think will be the repercussion for India's image at global level by this India-China escalated tensions?
Very good question you have asked, Afla. Actually the thing is which I'm afraid has gone to the international press much more than the manner in which it has been depicted in India, is that China, for all practical purposes, has entered into the territory which has actually been not in the control of China erstwhile. This is a fact, and this fact is,
it means when India lost its land to China.
Yeah, right? For all practical purposes,
yeah.
it is
just a border dispute issue.
Yeah, see what actually has happened. I discussed it earlier too. That yes, it is because of the fact that the LAC, line of actual control, is still not well defined. The area has not been well defined, but there was some settled principle, in a sense you can say, that yeah, till this point you are, till this point we are. What China has done as of now, that seemingly settled portion has been violated by China, and China has entered further into India. Okay, so this is what actually has happened. So as regards the international repercussion, you say yes, they are the people who base themselves on principles and facts and international law. But see what has happened in the South China Sea thing. See, China has explicitly violated the UNCLAUSE, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Everyone knows the Chinese expansionist policy and the manner in which China does what it has to do. China is China, and China does what it wants to do. Okay, and China plays its move very well, very strategically. Okay, so the thing is, in international relation, the overall result implication of all these things, I think, will be in a sense to further buttress the claim that India may not be in a position to actualize the thing, to actually follow the things which it says, and it may embolden others to do the things. And we have seen it too, because the manner in which, the aggressive manner in which Nepal is saying things to India, the manner in which in some sense Pakistan is actually doing things, the manner in which we are not in that good terms with other neighboring countries, these images matter. So the manner in which we respond to the incursion of one country has a lot of effect on the overall image of the country that way. Okay, this is not to mean that India on its own is actually not trying to do things. India actually is on a military level talk with the people of China. India is actually trying to mitigate the problem. India is actually India doesn't want to escalate the tension. But then the thing, there is a limit to things. If you are in you are coming in to my territory, then there must be a time to say that, yeah, you have to stop.
What do you think India's response should be to this incursion of China, or like China violated the international boundary?
See, you cannot say it to be international boundary in that sense of the term. I have many times discussed that actually the position of LAC is still not well defined. That is not well defined. That is accepted. But what I mean to say is that the almost agreed upon settled things, there is a what you can say, that there is not a reality, but there is an assumption of reality something. So that has been violated by China. That is what I want to say. So your question was what actually is going to be what actually India does. See, the first and foremost thing which I think India must have done is to accept the things, is to say that yes, this has happened and this is wrong which has happened. So rather than shrouding in this in mystery, that yes, this is an ambiguous position, this area has actually not been defined, and since this area has not been defined, therefore it's a differing position of India and China. India must say that yes, we have come and this is wrong on your part. The manner in which you are building, and there are satellite images. A former army officer has also, a retired army officer has also written that there are satellite images that they have actually established their safe houses there.
From finger 8 to finger 4.
Yeah, these things they have actually done, and that has come in the satellite image. So we must first accept that yes, this has happened, and when we will admit it, then we will try to do things, and we try to bring the Chinese people, bring home the point that actually this is not wrong, and if this continues, then there are repercussions for this. There are repercussions for this in all sense of the term, because there is this Chinese trade between India and China, and there are a lot many forums in which India supports China. There is WTO talking, there is at WHO level, at various international level, India supports. So India has a lot of leverages to otherwise too, apart from that military skirmish, direct military skirmish. Okay, so India can utilize all those things. India has the option to utilize those things. But first, for all these things, we have to be truthful. We have to admit the things. We have to actually understand the ground realities of the thing, and we should be aware of the things which actually is taking place on the ground. The manner in which our armed forces, see, I am not very sure the veracity, and I cannot guarantee the veracity of this, but there was this news somewhere that the border security forces actually boycotted Chinese goods, and there was
CAPF.
yeah,
Ministry of Home Affairs pull out all the products of like Chinese
Yeah,
products from the CAPF canteens.
yeah, and that is because of the
Because of this
initiative by
yeah.
by these people on the ground.
Yeah.
So
But
these
then-
things are
but
actually
then
happening.
But the government claimed that at the government level they didn't boycott it. Like they are not boycotting Chinese products.
Yeah, so actually things should have to be, because if our forces, if those people on the ground, they are actually not taken on board, and actually their grievances actually are not, because see, they are defending the country at such an high altitude, and if we are for politics
So
of some other matter, we are doing
Is
things.
it correct to say that India lost an unfought war?
See, I will not say this, that India lost an unfought war, because things are still going on,
Yeah.
and I think better sense
So
will
what do you think will
prevail.
be the outcome of this? Like they recently did a military level talk, and now they are preparing for a diplomatic level talk.
See, again,
And they are not allowing the media to go cover all these issues. They are not putting out any information like whatever happened in the meetings and what the government is doing on both the sides, and they are continuously like rhetorically saying that this is a bilateral issue and we are going to solve it bilaterally. We don't want interference of any third party.
very nice question again, Afla. Actually, if you allow me to again take the help of politics to understand these things. See, again I'll say, being a student of politics, we have to see that why China is behaving the way it is behaving. It is for all practical purposes. During the light of such a problematic pandemic the world actually is in, it would not be judicious for any government to indulge in such sort of thing. So why actually China, which actually are very intelligent people that way, and they plan their moves very intelligently, why they did this? Why at this point of time they're interested in that part of these two regions? Why is it that? And they opened the offensive at two places, at Nakula in Sikkim and the Pongong So Lake area in Yaksachin area. Why they did so? It has to do a lot with the thing which I discussed earlier, the rising aspiration of a power to assert itself internationally, and when you want to assert yourself internationally, to assume that status or a challenger to the global hegemon and try to become a global hegemon yourself, you do a lot many things. You have to show that you have arrived the world. You have to give the optics, and the optics has to be calibrated in such a manner to give the impression that yes, you are a power. So what has happened? If we go before the incident in China, what happened? There was a lot of hue and cry pertaining to the fact that China didn't open itself in the manner it should have as regards to the Wuhan virus crisis problem, because there was this a lot many countries, even President Trump, otherwise it should not be taken that much seriously, but even he said that that virus actually arose from a place in Wuhan, a lab in Wuhan, and that was because of the laxity on the part of China, because of opacity on the part of China, that it didn't tell how it is managing the things, and that is because of the reason that is one of the causes that China didn't open things earlier, that the virus is spread to different countries of the world. For example, if China had put itself into a lockdown, in a serious lockdown that way, the virus would never have come to other countries of the world. So these things actually was coming to gain much ground, okay, and the onus of responsibility was going to be on China, a country which aspires itself to be a world power. So if you are aspiring yourself to be a world power, and this impression goes to the world that you are unable to manage a small virus crisis, and you are the reason for this problem all over the world, you actually are the epicenter of the problem, and you have allowed these things to happen at other places of the country, and you put the whole world in a sort of a very problematic crisis. So if this impression goes to the world, then what will happen? See, it actually will definitely cast a very negative impact. So these things actually were seen by the Chinese strategist, and in a sense to deflect some of these things, what China is doing, China has itself in a sense put a stop to the crisis, to the pandemic crisis. So China is actually trying to put the world on a narrative in which it wants the world to come out with. And the best strategy is to embroil India in that. So India actually is then will defend all its energy in trying to limit the things, and see the manner in which United States also jumped into the narrative. So even America played into the narrative set by China in a sense. So that actually in a sense deflects the actual bubble of anger which was happening against China. So China very intelligently tried to do the things, and in a sense it was successful too. So I will say that the moves by China has much less to do with territory that way, and much more to do with these international politics things that way. Because had it been to do with the Indian declaration of Ladakh as a union territory, so things would have happened quite earlier. And China is in a position to do anything any day. China is far ahead. But why now? Why this time? So if we delve deeper into why now, then these things happen. So that actually is the thing, and this is how world politics is played, and we need to actually be very aware of all these things. Our leadership should be aware of all these things. So we should not just be bothered about 5 years and elections. We should actually see the future of India. We should actually need to be quite visionary, and again I'll say, we need to understand things in terms of our enlightened
how
national
the Indian
interests.
leadership manage this crisis? Like what is your analysis?
I think that Indian leadership has to do a lot to the extent possible. They are trying not to escalate this, and in a sense they are right also, because if they'll escalate it, that will be quite problematic. They are trying to solve it diplomatically, and the manner in which the such sort of crises are sought at the level of military, at the level of the officials of the different diplomatic missions. So to the extent possible, India is actually trying to mitigate the things, but I must again say that there should be more clarity. There should be more clarity.
The government should like tell its people what is actually
From all parts, from all avenues, things should be more clear. People should have people should be in the know of the things.
It will put a full stop on the speculations everybody is making.
Of course, because if you pass a regulation that nobody can say anything about these things, so that doesn't stop the thing, because it's the age of internet. Because if your narrative will not come, some other's narrative will gain ground. Chinese narrative will gain ground. American narrative will gain ground. Because we cannot curb information that way. So let the truth come. Let the truth be there, and we all are here to fight. We all are here to do the things which is required for India. All the people are, just because of that some people are not happy with your policies doesn't mean that they will criticize you in terms of international relations. So everyone has their vision of India, and maybe if my vision of India doesn't match with your vision of India, so that doesn't mean that I am anti-Indian and you are very Indian. That doesn't mean so. Things should be more clear, and we all should be supportive of the moves which the government makes. We should be constructive in our criticism. Yes, we should be constructive in our criticism. We should also be aware of the limitations which the government works in. We should also be aware of the limitations which the international politics impose. So these things are there, but this is also a fact that we need to be more clear.